Chris Jericho is nearly guaranteed to earn big money on his next deal. If he does ultimately hit free agency, the 54-year-old is expected to garner heavy interest from promotions across the globe. Yes, that includes WWE, with one source telling Fightful that he would most certainly get a multi-million-dollar return to the company. Let's talk about it. This is the return of the Ayatollah of rock and roll, the return of the best in the world at what he does. The return of the Codebreaker, the return of the Ocho, the return of the Nueve, the return of La Champion. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the return of Jericho. Drink it in, man. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe if you want to have some productive dialogue or just shoot the shit about professional wrestling at Jack O'Hara TV on YouTube. The return of Jericho. It's enticing. It's an enticing thing to talk about. I've wanted Chris Jericho to return to the WWE for nearly 10 years, damn it, since the 2016 run with Kevin Owens, the list of Jericho, the pen click, like all of it. Chris Jericho has been off WWE TV since, I believe, early 2018 was the last time we saw him in the Greatest Royal Rumble match in 2018 in Saudi Arabia. Remember, he was almost scheduled to compete in a casket match against The Undertaker in Saudi Arabia. That was WWE's first event, I believe, in Saudi Arabia as a part of their current deal with Saudi. Chris Jericho is going to have some big decisions to make at the end of the year. Does he want to sign with AEW? Does he want to sign with WWE? Does he want to come on the O'Hara and Friends YouTube channel? We've talked about it. I hope he comes on within 2026, maybe 2027. Chris Jericho's got a lot of big decisions to make. We haven't seen Chris Jericho on wrestling TV since Dynamite, I think in early April of this year, of 2025, when Big Bill and company were in the ring, and he wasn't angry, he was just disappointed. He was smashing his baseball bat across the Jeritron 5000, or whatever the hell he calls it on AEW television, I'm not really sure. Jericho's been with AEW since 2019, so nearly 6-7 years now, since signing that deal with Tony Khan in Jacksonville, Florida in 2019 to join AEW. And it was a big deal. Jericho was there, Cody Rhodes was there, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks. They put on what was a great professional wrestling show, one of the greatest shows we saw in a long time in that 2019 era, because remember, WWE was really shooting the shit. Unfortunately, it was the drizzling shits, as Randy Orton would say. It was the drizzling shits for quite a while on WWE TV until Roman Reigns and the whole Bloodline story kind of brought fans back into it and kind of took WWE to the next level. But WWE was hurting, and AEW was on the rise. Cody Rhodes had a chip on his shoulder. The Young Bucks had a chip on their shoulder. Kenny had a chip on their shoulder. And Jericho had a chip on his shoulder as well. Jericho versus Omega headlined the first ever Double or Nothing event. Jon Moxley, the former Dean Ambrose, made his debut. AEW was red hot that first year. We saw Chris Jericho take on Cody Rhodes for the AEW World title. He was their first ever inaugural AEW World Champion. Chris Jericho did a lot for AEW in his time, but we may have seen the last of Chris Jericho in an all-elite wrestling ring, because he is going to be coming for a huge wrestling contract. In today's world, the money that's being thrown around in the world of professional wrestling, if you're a star, if you're a John Cena, if you're a CM Punk, if you're a Roman Reigns, even in AEW standards, Adam Copeland's probably not cheap. Christian Cage probably wasn't cheap. You know, there's certain guys that, you know, get guaranteed big contracts just because of their name alone. And Chris Jericho is one of those guys. Chris Jericho is a 6-time world champion in WWE. He's the first ever undisputed WWE champion in history, because he defeated The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin in the same night to become the first ever undisputed WWE champion. And he'll be the first to tell you, he said it all the time, and he'll probably say it in his first promo if he does come back in 2026. What would WWE possibly have for Chris Jericho upon a return? Obviously, my mind and heart goes to the list. It goes to Kevin Owens. It goes to Sami Zayn. It goes to, you know, him being paired with someone to bring out his comedic side. Or are we going to get a heel Chris Jericho? The Painmaker? Are we going to get Judas by Fozzy as his entrance music in WWE? I think if he returns, say, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia at the Royal Rumble, you're coming out to break the walls down. That's the Jericho WWE fans know and love, and that's what you want to hear for his return for the first time in nearly 8 years since he's been in a WWE ring. Who does Jericho compete with at WrestleMania 42? I would suggest probably an up-and-comer like a Braun Breaker, like a Bronson Reed, maybe even like an Ethan Page. Maybe by that point in time, Seth Rollins will be back and Chris Jericho will be the leader of the Vision. Who knows? There's a lot of interesting possibilities for Chris Jericho. I mean, Chris Jericho versus Kevin Owens is always going to write itself. But what does Chris Jericho bring to WWE in 2026 if he does return? It would be one of the biggest pops of all time. It would be a huge moment for WWE heading into 2026 since they're losing the greatest of all time in John Cena in December. Maybe Jericho makes his return in December of 2025. You know, to me, this is how you book Chris Jericho's return. And this is just me because there are a lot of options. I think a lot of them will revolve around helping out the next generation. Like I mentioned, the Braun Breakers, the Bronson Reeds, the Ethan Pages, even the Austin Theories of the world could use a rub from Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho turned Kevin Owens into a bigger star than he already is. He turned Sami Zayn into a bigger star than he already is. I mean, in that area in 2016, he elevated Roman Reigns in a United States Championship feud. He elevated Seth Rollins. He elevated Kevin Owens. Chris Jericho elevated AJ Styles in 2016 before AJ Styles went on that massive run. Remember, Jericho faced AJ at WrestleMania 32. Chris Jericho is coming back to, yes, sell out arenas, but he's also coming back to help out the younger talent. And to me, there's no better way to book Chris Jericho's return by putting him at the top of the heel faction on Monday Night Raw by having him be the new leader of the Vision, the new leader of Braun Breaker, the new leader of Bronson Reed. And hell, you don't need Paul Heyman at that point. Paul Heyman, can get speared by Braun Breaker. He can get tsunamied by Bronson Reed, which could set up the eventual feud with Brock Lesnar versus Braun Breaker, Brock Lesnar versus Bronson Reed. Hell, maybe even Brock Lesnar versus Chris Jericho, because we've never seen it, man. We all heard the rumors after SummerSlam of 2016. Jericho and Lesnar getting in each other's grills a little bit after Lesnar bloodied Randy Orton in the main event of SummerSlam in Brooklyn, New York. We'd love to see Jericho versus Lesnar for the first time ever. Even though Jericho's going to be 55, I'd still love to see it. But to me, Chris Jericho returning to the WWE leaves probably the best impact if he comes out of the gate swinging for the fences and he puts himself right in that main event seed. And there's no better way to do that than having Chris Jericho lead the future of the WWE with Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. Chris Jericho versus Seth Rollins, the Visionary, versus La Champion, versus the Nueve, versus the Learning Tree. I mean, come on, the Learning Tree versus the Vision, that writes itself too. The promos would be great. Jericho has always been the master of reinvention. Chris Jericho versus Kevin Owens is probably something on the docket if Kevin Owens hasn't wrestled his last pro wrestling match ever. Chris Jericho versus Sami Zayn is something that I would personally sign up for. Chris Jericho taking on Roman Reigns if he's going to be joining the Vision is probably inevitable. Chris Jericho could honestly take on Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship if Drew McIntyre isn't the champion by then. I mean, Chris Jericho and Cody Rhodes supposedly had a little bit of beef in AEW, if you recall, in 2019. Chris Jericho, Cody Rhodes, they had their on-air rivalry on AEW television. But Chris Jericho and Cody Rhodes supposedly didn't really get along. They respected each other. I don't know if they liked each other, though. I think Cody Rhodes even said it, not even in an on-air, on-TV AEW promo. He said it in an interview basically saying, I respect Jericho. He elevates the product. He elevates what we're doing here. Yes, he's the bridge to WWE fans coming over to AEW. He's still a dick, but I respect him. Chris Jericho versus Cody Rhodes in a title scene match, that I would sign up for that. And there's a lot of storytelling to be told there because both of them experienced the success on the other side of the fence. And the one thing that the WWE has not really done yet is acknowledge the impact that AEW has truly made on their current product. I mean, WWE's top guy right now invented All Elite Wrestling, right? If Chris Jericho comes back, that's one of AEW's top performers of the last 6 years. WWE Hall of Famer Edge is now Adam Copeland in AEW. Christian Cage. The Hardy Boys went over for a little bit. I mean, there's so many names that have flip-flopped. I mean, Andrade, we have no idea what's happening with him. He left WWE. He joined AEW, but then there was a whole lawsuit because he didn't wait 90 days. Now he could be coming back to WWE. The other thing that we do got to take into account is that WWE has been putting out vignettes lately. Apparently, just walking black shoes, all three different vignettes of 3 walking black shoes, and all of them were different. One were suit shoes, one looked like running shoes, and the other one looked like boots, which would insinuate that a new faction is coming. My first guess, personally, is that it's Imperium. Gunther's the man wearing the suit shoes, and people say Gunther doesn't wear socks. I mean, he could be wearing socks now. Who the fuck cares if he doesn't wear socks or if he does wear socks? Could be Gunther. It could be Ludwig Kaiser. It could be Imperium the way that they were back in 2023. It could also be Santos Escobar. It could be Andrade. It could be Jericho. It could be Jericho, Breakker, and Reed. And that's more so what I think Chris Jericho should be doing if he debuts in WWE in early 2026, which would probably lead to a Jericho Rollins feud. It would probably lead to a Jericho Lesnar feud. It would probably lead to a Jericho Reigns feud. But I think Chris Jericho returning to the WWE in 2026, there's a whole lot on the bone there. With John Cena leaving, you could immediately pivot to a Chris Jericho retirement tour, man. It could be Jericho in the Hall of Fame in 2026 at WrestleMania 42. We could see Jericho for one more year leading up to WrestleMania 43 in Saudi, and then he waves goodbye. Hello and goodbye, Chris Jericho. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that Chris Jericho is making his return to WWE here very soon? Would you like to see a new invention of Chris Jericho in WWE in 2026? Would you like to see some of the old Chris Jericho, the best in the world at what he does? The Ayatollah of rock and roll, Y2J, the learning tree, the list, it. What do you guys want to see? Chris Jericho has been the master of reinvention. I just want to see, in my opinion, a guy that's going to lead the future of WWE with the vision, with an Ethan Page potentially being his manager. Maybe you do a Miz Carmelo Hayes situation, but on a much higher level with Jericho and Ethan Page, since they can both play the cocky heel at times. Or do you do the greatest hits? Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens teaming up. Just some of the Chris Jericho versus CM Punk one final time. What do you guys think? When Chris Jericho, and I'm saying it now, when Chris Jericho returns in 2026, what do you guys want to see? Leave a comment down below.